Hi, my name is David Reski, CEO of Now Speed Marketing, and welcome to this edition of Marketing in the Now, where we talk about the best ideas in digital marketing. And my guest today is Suzanne Carawan, the CMO at Web to Market and an expert in e-commerce performance marketing. Suzanne, welcome to the show.
Hey, nice to be here. Thanks for having us.
Suzanne, I understand you live in Columbus, Ohio, and as you know, I also lived there for 7 years. Went to Ohio State and loved living in the Midwest. How do you like living in the Midwest?
Oh, I love it. I wish we had moved here. We moved here about 10, 11 years ago. We should have done it probably 10 years sooner. It's a great place to live and raise kids and have a great family. And if you're a sports fan, if you're a foodie, if you love the theater, it's a great, great city to be in.
I love going to
And it's
visit.
booming, by the way. It's
Yeah,
thriving, it's booming, it's growing. It's a really hot spot to be.
that's awesome. Yeah, I have a lot of family still in Ohio, and I love going back to visit them. And they all feel the same way. It's like this really, it's this best kept secret. They all feel like it's great. Cost of living is great. A lot of things to do. So that's awesome. Well, you and I have been talking about marketing, and I know you're an expert in many areas of marketing, but we've been talking about perfecting the science of e-commerce performance marketing specifically. And tell me what you've learned about e-commerce performance marketing that you feel like is something that the general public doesn't know.
Well, I think first and foremost, I think we should even step back and say, what's with e-commerce? Because
Sure.
e-commerce is one of those, and I don't know, we could explore why is this the case? Because no one seems to know this. But if you look in the world of marketing, I would say e-commerce is akin to, if we had to do an analogy between all of your marketing vehicles that you have, channels, all your tech stack, and let's say a house that you live in, e-commerce has got to be like the water heater of the house. It's like you get it, you set it, you forget it. It works for 10 years and you never think about it to invest in it, even though you know you should update it until the day it breaks. And as soon as nobody has hot water, you know how important that thing was, right? And e-commerce has become this kind of it always has been. It's kind of this piece of software. It's the marketing part, even though it's driving revenue, it somehow doesn't get the same care and investment and people ruminating about these things as it probably should. Now if you're a super large corporation, maybe you have a full team who's really doing this. But for web to market, most of our clients are a lot of them are family owned businesses. They're in that kind of $1 to $10 million space, sometimes 20 million, but somewhere there. So not in the big super mega corporations. And so they tend to not think about it. It's like I said, it's a set it and forget it. And actually, there's so much goodness in there that they need to look at. And what has happened with what I'm seeing is there's a revitalization, a rejuvenation, a whole idea like, wow, we should rediscover our e-commerce again because of AI and because of what AI can now do for the customer experience, et cetera. But I think that people are starting to say, and we're certainly trying to shout from the rooftops that, there's so much in e-commerce, not just about driving traffic to the site, seeing how we can convert, being able to track it with, let's say, retargeting afterwards, but the customer base itself, we can now actually take all that data and activate it. So think of it as more data enablement via AI. And you can actually then take that customer data that you have and activate it and put it back out into the world to actually do additional lead generation for you. And that's really exciting because again, the hardest part is to get the customer, right? But once a customer's bought, how about we figure out how we can buy again, and or they probably know people that are like them that we could actually go and target too. And I think that's the next step in e-commerce now, about being able to track those people down.
You touched on so many areas, and we're going to get to as many of those as we can during our conversation today. But I want to, while we're taking a step back and thinking about e-commerce in general, talk to me about how your customers view e-commerce as part of their overall marketing strategy. Is it kind of a
Yeah.
core to the marketing strategy? Is it like this little utility that's bolted onto the side? How does it fit into, or maybe how does it and how should it fit into, and maybe you could address that differently if you see it differently in B2B and B2C.
Mm-hmm.
But just talk to me about the strategic nature of e-commerce and how your clients view it.
Sure. And I think it depends again how, where, and I think that's a good question. Where does it fit in the actual overall strategy and revenue strategy of the entity? Excuse me. So again, for most of web to market, I think there's a whole category of people that do e-commerce that are kind of in the drop shipping category, affiliate marketing category. They do small crafts strategy and they do that. We have people, our clientele tends to be they started in brick and mortar, probably still have a brick and mortar, and then e-commerce is a piece. It's just another channel for them to actually gain a greater market share, so they're not just so geographically bound. And so in doing that, it's definitely part of the overall revenue picture. But what we're starting to see is people saying, well, listen, I'm starting to realize again, we're geographically bound with a combination of e-commerce. Yes, it's been bolted on, but if we actually now start to include it in the actual overarching marketing strategy, people are starting to see we can actually get a better return on investment by being able to do that. And but the focus, of course, has been on what's happening right in front of you in the brick and mortar. So what's interesting is at some point they thought we should put in e-commerce. And what we're seeing now is a real, again, resurgence to say, wait a minute, how do we actually start to think omni-channel and really put e-commerce front and center into this piece of it? And that's, I think, along with digital marketing. So I think the digital marketing piece is what's coming in, that the again, these brick and mortars, we have some of the most amazing clients. They are multi-generational, et cetera. But the stories they have, they're starting to think, hey, you know what? I've got great photography. I've great testimonials. If we put that back out into social media, right? If I start putting that into podcasts or streaming, or there's so many other ways to market now to drive business to their store, et cetera, whether online or in the store, they're starting to understand we can actually have brand proliferation and let that e-commerce be part of it. I think that's the piece of it. I think e-commerce has again been the water heater. It's been like
Yeah,
pumping away, being the water heater. Now we've gotten to the point of the evolution where people are like, well, what if we put in a really beautiful faucet? Right? Like finally get to
right.
the detail part of it and the nuances and take the time to do that craftsmanship that comes with it. And it takes time. It takes time and investment.
And then it can be more part a core part of their business, or maybe most of their marketing or their thinking about marketing is happening focused on the brick and mortar, and now they can think about that. What's the role of kind of thinking about campaigns? What's the role of campaigns in
Mhm.
a marketing strategy that focuses on e-commerce? And how do those campaigns differ from the brick and mortar campaigns that they might be running today?
Well, I think the e-commerce world, right? It's so much predicated on holidays. That's of course going to be the first thing. Black Friday, any of the holiday sales, depending on your business and your seasonality. I mean, we have certain clients who, let's say that they create they import and resell mosaic tiles for beautiful installations. They might have a different seasonality in the building cycle, right? So whatever their industry is. Certainly, we have clients who, let's say, ship cupcakes all over the country. They have a real seasonality that has to do. So I think for many e-commerce, the e-commerce component, the seasonality is all about their industry. So whether they're something that's holiday based, et cetera. Of course, you have the big ones, usually Black Friday. Again, seasons, holidays are a big piece of it. We have a client who sells cupcakes all over the United States. So cupcakes tend to be somewhat consistent because you got birthdays that are nice and, you know, kind of evenly distributed. But obviously, you've got the big holidays as well.
That makes a lot of sense. Talk to me about, the ROI on this. So obviously, or maybe it would seem that if the ROI is strong on the e-commerce piece and it's contributing significantly to the business, that people would want to make bigger investments in it, put more attention into it, create more campaigns. But if it's just a little drip thing that's contributing a few dollars, it's not really significant, then it gets treated like a utility. How do you get
Mhm.
your clients to kind of focus deeper on turning it into a significant moneymaker for them and, treating it like a real core part of the business?
I think that's when the digital marketing really comes in. What's great about e-commerce is you can see without a shadow of a doubt the ROI. right? They're either people bought or they didn't. So if revenue's coming in, that's great. I think the missing piece has been we're still coming out of a world where to some extent, again, it's dependent on the company size, but the analytics haven't been there. People are still kind of struggling by with trying to decipher Google Analytics, and then nobody knows how to put in that whole pixel and show the shopping cart and follow that through. Most small business owners don't get into that, right? So maybe you have a marketing agency that can do that and hand you back, some nice charts, et cetera, and you have to believe what they're saying. I think the bigger thing is the tools have now caught up. Again, many AI kind of based tools and options to make the user experience, bring down the friction for that. But also, I would say really up the experience for the owners so that they can understand what is going on and put it in business terms, not techie pseudo, like I'm urchin Google Analyticsy world, but like real life stuff. Like, hey, let's look at a graph and show here's all the people that just bought from you in the last 6 months and where are they spread out in the country. So let's look at geographic stuff. Let's append data, which we now do at Web to Market. Let's add more consumer data on your customer. And so we can actually learn more about them. And that's when you get the insights. Like, oh, look at this. How did we have what we found out is that, 20% of the people that are buying are first time buyers. They're coming from this demographic, right? And they all like dogs. So you can actually get some of that consumer household level data that's going to inform your next campaign. So now your next campaign, why don't we target those people? Why don't we use some of that to inform our creative and go after people, take the same customer data, feed it back into the systems to get lookalike audiences, et cetera. And lo and behold, guess what happens to ROI? Up.
So you're talking about being smart about how you use data, using information from your existing systems to create new campaigns, new strategies to reach out to existing customers and new customers and really build the business. Talk to me about AI. So you mentioned AI. How is AI making it perhaps easier to create content or create strategies or marketing campaigns or anything to leverage for these e-commerce campaigns?
Oh, I'm a huge AI proponent. Love AI. Um, again, I think a couple things. One, AI is able to let's take the analysis side. So something where you would need hours and a lot of understanding of Excel to understand, you can now use AI tools like Julius, et cetera. Some of these kind of analysis tools feed in your data and actually get back real things that you could use in a business world, right? So that alone, and it can give you the insights and just spit it out to you. That alone is just mind blowing. From the side of the user, the AI also being able to put in now chatbots, being able to put in, let's say, I don't know if you've ever had to write an FAQ and keep a knowledge base and constantly add to it. It's painful unless you like that type of thing. But the ability to have documentation on all of these things we're doing, create help videos for your customers almost, within seconds, being able to give them, again, options when you're not online, if you don't have customer service, being able to have a really intelligent chatbot that actually is helpful, right, can be a game changer for an e-commerce site. You can see if somebody gets frustrated, the AI can see that they're on the site and they've abandoned cart. Well, why don't we do a little bit more than just send an email, right? Why don't we actually track it back with some variety that would fit that target demographic? So whether it's a text message and an email or an actual, call that's coming from AI, being able to assist you. But all those types of things can be, and you could actually have the creative pulled up and actually target it to that user. So let's say that I'm running an online, excuse me, e-commerce store for pets, right? So if it's a cat person and they're abandoning cart, buying cat litter or cat stuff, I probably don't want to send them dog stuff because they're cat people,
Hmm.
and conversely true, even maybe more so. So if I know the profile and the customer history, right, clearly I can do that. I kind of liken it to, who some of the best data collectors on earth are grocery stores, right? So grocery stores know where you are in life. If I'm, in the grocery store is checking out the stuff and I see here comes down the belt and I see diapers, right? I see formula and then I see like, I don't know, dog treats, right? And then I see like 3 bottles of wine. I'm probably guessing you're at that stage in life. You're stuck home with your baby, etc. Right. And that's kind of where you are. So your groceries tell you a huge amount about who the customer is. And therefore you could target coupons to them, etc. We inherently get that. We haven't really been able to activate that, I think, as easily in e-commerce as we now can because of AI.
Yeah, it strikes me that, I've been doing digital marketing for a long time. So I started my first company in the 90s, the beginning of the commercial internet with building websites. And it strikes me that at that time, right, that the internet became the great equalizer, right? So everybody could have a website, you could sell on, you could have a storefront if you're a big company or a small company. But one of the big differentiators was the big companies had the budgets to create all the
Mm,
things you just mentioned. They
hmm
had the budgets to create all the FAQs and the help docs, help information, the documentation and the videos and the chatbots and run the analytics. And it strikes me that AI is going to become a great democratizer of this, being letting smaller companies do e-commerce as effectively with the right kind of content as some of the larger companies. Are you seeing that kind of change or that kind of thinking among some of your clients?
Yeah, I am. And I think the other thing is a democratizer is probably where we are now in addition with let's say social media. I think what's exciting for our clients at Web to Market is because so many of them are brick and mortar, they are these, pro family generational kinds of companies, they're kind of like cult brands that people know about if you're local to the community, or let's say if you're just in that specific part of the industry, you're like, oh, we know that this is what they do. But between social media now and what AI can do, we can actually expose that cult brand to a much larger audience, right? So they have the ability to really put it out there and then the people that are attracted to them to actually come in. And so I love that, right? So I love that. It's kind of like the opposite of Walmart. It's the actually being able to take these really authentic, such pride filled brands of hard work. I mean, we've got clients, I mean, their great grandfathers have started these businesses and they've had all these evolutions of, what that means for brick and mortar and all these kinds of things. And to be able to take that story and get it out there and for more people to enjoy and become, hopefully not just one customer, but like an actual advocate of that brand, a long time customer. That's something I think extraordinary that we're helping to build.
Yeah, that's so exciting. I mean,
Hmm
it's almost like these local brands. I love the way that you talked about they're almost cult brands because they get a local following. It's almost like the opposite of the generic AI. They're really real people with real personalities who can then leverage AI to take that brand and then extend it in a much bigger way at much lower cost than they could have before. Talk to me about the technology changes. Your firm obviously helps implement
hmm
technology, but what's happened on the technology front? Is the same water heater? Am I moving from, oil
Yeah.
to propane?
Yes.
Do we have an analogy
Yeah.
here?
Lot of movement in the e-commerce world. Again, I think you're seeing an evolution of people wanting. Again, I would put it as maybe it's a democratization. Maybe it's that's a good way to put it too. It's starting to move from, and it's moving quickly from the realm of technology. So I liken e-commerce to it's this area of technological and marketing purgatory.
Mm.
Marketers a lot of times come right up to the e-commerce and they kind of stop and they go, oh, and then it goes into the IT world, and the IT people kind of come all the way up to the e-commerce world and stop. And it kind of sits between where the two of them should be in this MarTech, hip to hip relationship about how do we work on this. You oftentimes don't see that again. I mean, again, large, yes. But as we come down the million, the revenue chain, and yet it's such a crossover where you do need the skill sets of both types of marketing and technology. But what's happening is you're starting to see, platforms like Shopify, let's say, come out, right? Or TikTok shops. And so they've made it into a business opportunity now for business people who think like business people to be able to grasp what this thing is. And nobody's talking to them in pseudo tech talk anymore, right? Business people understand revenue, they understand top line growth, right? And they understand I got to make money to, I got to invest money to make money. So once you start talking in business terms about what can happen with this, then they get it. Like, for example, TikTok's done a great job of associating TikTok with small business and being able to get small business on the map. So TikTok shops is a natural evolution. I don't know if TikTok meant to get into the e-commerce space, but they're there now, right? So any business owner who has a product, they're going to look at every possibility, marketplaces, right, et cetera, to be able to distribute that product. So I think that's what's really changing. You're seeing again, platforms come out that are easier to use. Business people can use it, drag and drop, kind of like kind of like when content management systems came out, right? We went from coding, we're in a no code environment now. AI, of course, is helping with that too, but that's helping business people to be able to make changes on the fly. That used to be like, your e-commerce company, you coded it and you had to sit there because any change you made cost money. You need a developer to do it. We're not in that world anymore, right? Business people want to, so if they can understand that they can interact with it and change it all the time, now we can run more off, we can run more frequent campaigns, right? It can't just be like once a year we have Black Friday. We could be running stuff all the time and bundle this and spotlight this and, take promo codes, et cetera. It makes for a much more dynamic, fluid, again, business opportunity. So again, I think you're seeing that it's coming out of the tech world into the business world, and how can you blend both of those together?
So because the costs are coming down, the technology is getting easier, it's becoming easier for ordinary companies to use it to create campaigns and make the e-commerce an effective part of their business. I want to explore something you mentioned about this purgatory, and I might just ask you to talk about the fear. And we've had this before. I mean, as a digital agency, we've run campaigns for e-commerce companies. There's often in those campaigns a lot of pressure because you're spending money, you're looking for positive return on ad spend or ROAS, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's tough, right? You spend $10,000, you want to make X dollars out of that. And so there's a lot of fear in doing that, in spending money to create an immediate ROI. And then on the tech side, it's got to be flawless and perfect as well. Talk to me about that fear and what can kind of, between tech and marketing and campaigns, and what you might advise or do to help clients reduce that fear and get past that and move into a place of success.
Yeah, I think one, I think there's just so much education that still hasn't been had. So on so many things, you get your finance person and they're like, they're for every dollar, they want a 10x return and they want it within a week, right? They're like, we spent it, where is it? And the marketing person's like, but we have impressions. Look at our impressions, right? Look how great that is. And it's only $7.65, and it's like, but the finance person's like, but I didn't see $21 come back, right? And then you have the tech person who's like, I don't know, it's working. It's not downtime, and nobody is doing a cyber attack on us, so that's all good. And so you've got these very different viewpoints. And to be honest, we haven't had a level set education across business units that they can actually understand themselves speak. Right. So, if a marketer is getting these huge number of impressions or they're getting opens and click throughs or any of the typical stuff you have in digital marketing, they're thrilled, right? But if you don't see purchase behavior, then they're not thrilled. So it's a tough spot for everybody to be able to kind of level set. And I think a lot of times there's just the benchmarks that are out there, and I'll do a big plug here for small business because it's all these industries are dominated by the large companies. Right. So if Adobe is putting out a report, that's wonderful. I mean, it's great to have these benchmark reports. But a lot of times we're like maybe at their events and industry, small business owners are not going to these things. So they don't get that education and it's not pertinent to them. It's not relevant. Like, they can't extrapolate. Like, I just spent 6 years working in a national association. That's not relevant to an association. That it's like pie in the sky data. It's good to know. It's like, wow, I wish I worked at Adobe. But small business is the backbone of the American economy. So it's like we have a really special niche in there that we have to figure out. And again, in a small business, you don't probably have fully formed teams of finance, marketing, technology. You might have outsourced agencies, but it's like how many people get together on a regular basis, like in a full team format, to do strategic planning on the company, right? And so it's a little bit different, and I think we need to acknowledge that, and carve out that niche and really say, what do we need to do? Because the work that small businesses do in the United States is incredibly important, right? They're employing more people collectively. We're bringing in more part of the economy. So that's a very important piece. So we have to figure out how do we better serve that
Yeah,
and make it realistic.
yeah,
Yeah.
and they are an important part of the economy, and by enabling e-commerce for their businesses, you're helping strengthen the business and making them more successful and more stable for their communities. We just have a few minutes left, Suzanne, and I just want to ask you to think about the owner of one of these small
Mm-hmm.
businesses, and if they've been, struggling with e-commerce, and it is like, the heater's working, but it's not really making a big difference in their business yet. And they've got some functions in marketing and tech and finance. They're struggling with some of the issues that you talked about. What advice would you give that owner to kind of take their e-commerce program to the next level in 2025? What should they be doing to kind of get it going? Move their team along, get their e-commerce program to be much more significant. How would you advise them to start?
Well, I love that question because it's exactly, we didn't even practice this one. Exactly what I'm trying to bring to web to market, and we're undertaking to do, which is again get good partners. I mean, really good partners, right? Um, we have a client right now that's coming aboard, and I thought one of the smartest things he did was to bring us and his marketing agency together, right, with his staff, and all sit down and make sure that we know how to work together, right? We're not going to have like everybody pointing fingers at each other, and we're going to collaborate, and we're going to have consistent meetings. So I think that's one, right? One thing is treat it like a team that you're part of. I think the second part is that in that partner relationship, you need to say, are they giving you the comprehensive care you need? And they should be sitting down and bringing to you, in my opinion, some really great ideas and ways you could, improve revenue and things like that. So we're moving from kind of, I think, being kind of more of a point solution, like you call us when you need to get the water heater fixed or replaced, and instead getting really proactive to say, let's do strategic planning together. Let's look at what you're doing. And again, we're happy. We love to work with marketing agencies. We love to work with whomever, but we'll plug in and meet you where you are. But that's a real partner, right? And so I know that in getting to know our client base, I've talked to many an owner in the last month or so, and I've had them say to me, "This is not me putting this." Them saying, "Look, you're a strategic partner to us. Like you tell us, right? We know we're going to have to make a big platform move. Is that in 1 year, 3 years? Because when do we plan for it? We have to budget for it. Most small business owners just don't have an extra 20K sitting around. Right? That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. It's just like I said, that's why I think it's the water heater. Nobody wants to, like, oh great, I just didn't have anything else to do this month. Let me just find 2K and go get a new water heater. You're every time that breaks, you're like, right. It's just
Right.
not convenient. It's not convenient. And you didn't appreciate the water when you had it. But so but I think that's really what we're looking at now is because again, it's putting these pieces together in a seamless manner. So it's no longer just the technology, it's the technology and the marketing and the business, right? Being able to put that with the brand and the story and all of those pieces. How do you take all these incredible tools we have? Let's just talk video for a second. So many of these, e-commerce places, they could never make videos before of the products. It was hard enough to get a good photo, let's say, right, of the product. That was an investment. But now with AI, you can make incredible videos and get a much better experience to understand what you would feel like when utilizing the product, let's say.
Yeah.
So that gives access to a huge amount of ways that they can actually interact and tell their brand and story. So I
Yeah.
think we're looking to do all that.
There's so much to do there. Well, I really like the way you said that. You talked about getting the team together, the right team, and building trust, so we have a collaborative working environment, getting comprehensive new ideas out on the table and learning from, the best practices in the industry, and then putting together a comprehensive strategy. And I think your strategy involves the people, marketing, the business strategy, so it's all integrated, and it can work together. Well, So many great ideas, Suzanne. Thank you very much for taking the time to share it with our audience. If people want to connect with you and learn more about you and have this conversation or your services in your firm, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
Best way is just to go to www.web number two market. And then my name is Suzanne Carawan. You can, if you call up that phone number that's there, info at Web to Market, you can go to S Carawan at Web to Market. I know my name's a little bit harder there. So I think if you can get there, find me on LinkedIn, would love to connect. I love telling these stories. So happy to represent so many of our small business clients, and we're really looking to do more.
Great. Well, thanks again for taking the time today.
Thank you. Take care.